Okay. A very warm welcome to everyone who's joining us today from India and around the world. I'm Dr. Ananya Avasti, the founder and director for Anuvad Solutions, and I'd like to begin by sharing a brief about what Anuvad is, lay the thematic focus for our webinar today, and also introduce you to the program flow. As you may already know, Anuvad is an accelerator for knowledge translation designed to bridge the existing gap between the latest scientific evidence and policy action for promotion of India's health and nutrition agenda. Set up with the generous support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we at Anuvad particularly focus on providing policy translation for promotion of India's Poshan or the nutrition policy agenda through country-led and country-owned policy strategies that largely align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. With that background on Anuvad, the thematic focus of today's webinar and today's convening is Nutri-gardens and the lessons from India and various states, including Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, and Odisha, on how to scale them up in the Indian context for improved nutritional outcomes. As we understand, the basic concept of Nutri-gardens is builds on optimal utilization of land to grow vegetables, fruits, often retrofitted with backyard livestock or fishing farms that can support the nutritional needs of the community and address gaps in access, quality, and availability of diverse and nutritious diets. Nutri-gardens thus represents an exemplar practice which has the potential to address multiple goals of nutrition security, agri-food diversity, livelihood generation, and even environmental sustainability. In this regard, it is also important to note that one of the most powerful programs recently introduced by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, also which finds a great deal of mention in its new nutrition policy called Poshan 2.0 guidelines, has been the promotion of Poshan Vatikas, um, as which literally translates into Nutri Gardens, and how they promote setting up of these Poshan Vatikas or Nutri Gardens at the ICDS or the Anganwadi centers. And thus it becomes even more pertinent to learn lessons from India and around the world on what works, what may not work, and then how to scale them up for a greater impact. To discuss this, we are joined by a powerful lineup of speakers and panelists who come with, I guess, not even years, decades of experience in policy and research. Request Apurva from our team to screen share the program flow so that the audience can have an overview of the agenda for today. As you can see, we will start with we are very happy to be joined by Shri Vijay Kumar, IS retired, ex officio Special Chief Secretary to the Government of Andhra Pradesh, and also the Executive VC at Ritu Sadhikara Samstha, who will be sharing lessons from the Andhra Pradesh model. Then we are joined by Ms. Mansi Nimble, IAS, CEO of the Odisha Livelihood Mission. Thanks a lot, ma'am. We look forward to hearing about the Odisha model. And then we will jump into an interactive panel, which will also have many presentations to give you a sense of other models. From Bihar, we are joined by Mr. Jha, who's the director, who's the MD for the Institute of Environment and Eco Development, and who's also served as a consultant with UNICEF Chhattisgarh, and Dr. Kalpana Sri Raman, who has years of experience working in this space, particularly around the evidence piece from the Foundation of Medical Research, who will also be sharing her own lessons. The entire panel will be moderated by Professor Lindsay Jacks, who will be setting the context with a report on Poshan Vatikas that the Anuvad team prepared. Professor Jacks is the personal chair for global health and nutrition at the University of Edinburgh, and again has years and even a decade of experience of working not just around the world but also in India around aspects of sustainable food systems and nutri gardens. And very happy to add that she also serves as the academic advisor to Anuvad. So, with that brief overview, may I please request Professor Jacks to take it from here and set greater context on Poshan Vatikas and take the conversation forward. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ananya, for that. And thanks everyone for joining today. And for those who will be watching this recording later, we hope it's quite informative to you, particularly in terms of lessons learned, as Ananya mentioned, from people who have been implementing Nutri-garden programs for decades. So I'm going to talk a bit, just very briefly, about the Poshan Bhadakas report that Ananya mentioned. And just to say that for those who are joining us internationally, that Poshan Bhadakas, which translates into nutrition gardens, the goal of these is really to provide easy and affordable access to fruits, vegetables, as well as medicinal plants and herbs. And as Ananya mentioned, there has also been a recent introduction of animal source foods through backyard poultry and fishery units. And these gardens can be used either at the home or at a central location, such as an Anganwadi center. As Nutty mentioned, a key aspect of Poshan 2.0 is this Poshan Vodka program and scaling up these Nutri-gardens all across India. As of September 2022, this year, nearly 500,000 Poshan Vodkas had been set up across Anganwadi centers throughout India. And as part of Poshan Ma, which is the Nutrition Month in September 2022, there were lots of different events that were held to further promote these Poshan Bhadakas, including 150,000 in existing Poshan Bhadakas to introduce, as I mentioned, the animal source foods, as well as quite a lot of events for promoting introduction of millets, Nutri-dense food, and for identifying land that could be used to establish new Poshan Bhadakas. I just want to close by talking about some of the many pathways that we think these Nutri-gardens can have an impact on nutrition and health outcomes. So, of course, perhaps the most obvious one is through promoting access to nutrient-dense food and increasing micronutrient intake through consuming these nutrient-dense foods. But also there's a pathway through having any surplus produce that could be sold locally in order to increase income for that particular household. But that process also increases access to these nutrient-dense foods for other community members. And then if paired with nutrition education, which we'll see some examples of this in the programs that are described today, if it's paired with nutrition education and behavior change communication, you may also see improved purchase consumption or infant feeding behaviors of diverse nutrient-dense foods from those gardens. And finally, an important pathway, which Mr. Vijay Kumar will talk about today in particular, is women's empowerment, which is really a key aspect of having an impact on nutrition and health outcomes for these programs. As mentioned, we have published a report on the website that summarizes the evidence of effectiveness of Nutri-gardens in India. We did a systematic literature review to identify program evaluations, and we found 6 that had been done at that time, and we'll learn a lot more about other evaluations today. But a full report that kind of summarizes the findings of those 6 previous evaluations in India, and also just broadly the pathways that I mentioned about impact for Nutri-gardens on health and nutrition outcomes, is available on the Anavad website. So please feel free to go and check out that resource. So without further ado, stop sharing my screen now. Without further ado, we're going to go right into our presentation. So our first presentation today, we're really lucky to have a long-term inspiration of my own, actually, Mr. Vijay Kumar from Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Vijay Kumar, in his 37 or more years of government service, has spent more than 25 years in large-scale community mobilization and the promotion of livelihoods of rural women, tribal communities, and farmers. He spent 10 years as CEO of SERP in AP, and he led the mobilizing and empowerment of more than 11 million rural women in AP. From 2010 to 2015, he was the first mission director of NRLM, and he returned to the government of AP in April 2015 as special chief secretary to the Agriculture Department. And after his retirement in September 2016, he was appointed as the advisor to the government Agriculture Department. For the past 5 years, Mr. Vijay Kumar has been leading the climate resilient and I would say nutrition sensitive AP community managed natural farming program, and which is aiming to convert 6 million farmers across Andhra Pradesh to natural farming. And we're just really looking forward to hearing more about that and the Nutri-Village aspect of that program today. So over to you, Mr. Vijay Kumar, and thank you again for joining us today.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you, Lindsay. Uh, Next slide, please. Yeah, I think Lindsay very clearly mentioned the background. I believe women empowerment is the key. And so the background to our work, current work, is basically organizing rural women into self-help groups, federations of self-help groups program which started in the year 2000. And within that program, we had embedded a agriculture component, and so that the women can avoid use of chemical pesticides and chemical fertilizers. But at the same time, we also looked at behavior change through our community managed nutrition daycare centers. So this was a very important piloting, and it got us some outstanding results which were later incorporated by the WCD department of the state government. Next, please. So it was a very logical extension when I returned and was leading the agriculture department, that how do we move away from chemical fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and move into a farming situation which is good for farmers' livelihoods, but also good for health in four different ways. One, as farm workers, because women are more than 73% of them involved in agriculture. As farm workers, they are not inhaling these very hazardous chemicals. Then they are not consuming food which is with chemicals. They're also, the food should be more nutritious, so with more micronutrients, etc., which is possible through natural farming. And finally, the food should be free from heavy metal contamination. And most important, there should be enough food for the family. So this, it was not just from a production side. We also looked at it from the consumption side. And of course, the third most important reason is, in a climate emergency, natural farming is perhaps the best option for farmers and for the society. Next one, please. So the Andhra Pradesh community managed natural farming, as Lindsay pointed out, our idea is that by 2031, all 60 lakh farmer households and also 20 lakh farm worker households. These are more vulnerable because they're landless, and the entire arable land of the state should be transformed to natural farming. Next. So where are we today? In 2021-22, we had reached more than 600,000 farmers, and this year our plan is to have more than 10 lakh farmers. And we are present in 27% villages. We plan to take this to almost 80% villages in 2022-23. And just to mention this is funded by the government, by state government, central government, and a loan from KfW Bank Germany, and also by Azim Premji Foundation Philanthropy. And one speciality is that we recognize that there is a transition for farmer, 3 to 5 years transition period, and we don't provide any cash incentives during transition, and we also do not promise any market premia after transition. Now, within this program, Nutri-gardens is a universal intervention. That means every household is encouraged, motivated to have the Nutri-garden, and at the same time, there is a special focus on the landless farm worker households. Next one, please. Yeah. In terms of scaling up, because we have reached 10% farmers in about 6 years, and in the next 8-9 years, I must reach the remaining 90%. And I just mentioned because the theme was on scaling up, and the lessons that we have learnt is government support, advocacy, resources, and implementation mechanism is very critical. Knowledge, because this is knowledge intensive agriculture, natural farming. So the package of practices, videos, research, innovations on a continuous basis are very critical. And the fundamental uh, platform is that of the women self-help groups and federations. And the knowledge is taken to other farmers through farmers themselves. So it's not a top-down extension system, it's a farmer to farmer extension system. Best practitioner farmer is the trainer. Then we have plenty of collaborations with global and national institutions, including University of Edinburgh. So the idea is to learn from wherever the best knowledge exists and contribute to the overall knowledge in the system. And finally, the scaling up requires facilitating organizations from government, civil society, and essentially the community-based organization, because this transformation requires long-term hand-holding support to all farm families to enable this transition. So these are the important levers which has enabled scaling up in Andhra Pradesh, and these are applicable everywhere. Next, please. Yeah. So as mentioned, our policy is to universalize nutrition gardens, but here I am presenting the figure for the landless farm families. So we plan to reach out to 500,000 POP we call poorest of poor households, and till date we have reached out to 200,000 uh, families. And within that, we have an innovation, we call it 365 days green cover kitchen gardens. That means throughout 12 months of the year, there should be variety of fruits and vegetables, which I'll explain further in the Nutri Village intervention. Next one, please. Yeah, so this is a pilot intervention, Nutri Villages. We picked up 50 villages uh, in 2018, and the idea was, what more can we do to make a significant impact on the nutrition outcomes? So we also thought, how can we get young people interested in this work? So we recruited 50 uh, young postgraduates in nutrition, positioned them in the villages. Uh, they established demo Nutri-gardens. The focus was on behavior change communication with the 1,000 days target beneficiaries. They also learned how to work with women self-help groups, promoted farmer nutrition schools, and have a very good relationship with the Anganwadi centers. And then on the one hand, we have an intervention in that village that every farmer, every family moves to chemical-free agriculture. At the same time, we work with the 1,000 days target beneficiaries to enable them to have Nutri-gardens and backyard poultry to improve their nutrition. Next one, please. So what have we achieved? In these villages, we work with the Anganwadi centers. So you can see here 78% Anganwadi centers have in-house Nutri-gardens. And then we also work with the schools. 67% of the schools are having engagement with the farmers to buy these fresh vegetables, and 50% of the hostels have Nutri-gardens. So schools have both Nutri-gardens, but also meet their balance requirement from the farmers. Next, please. So there's a lot of motivation and training, and that is the hallmark, because the emphasis on demand side investment, not just supply side. Next one. Yeah, next please. So this is what a Nutri-garden is. It's a homestead garden, depends on the space available with each household. But the idea is to have as much diversity as possible, diversity of vegetables, fruits, some medicinal plants. but we use our emphasis on using local seeds. And 365 days green cover means year-round production in the homestead and also in the Anganwadi centers. And there are no synthetic chemicals. So 100% pesticide free. In fact, these women are eating something which you will be paying, quite a lot to buy this in the urban areas. And of course, we also have fencing, but we also utilize the fencing by growing creepers on that. Next one, please. Yeah, so you saw the crop diversity, but in terms of practices, there's a crop residue mulch cover which enables the conservation of moisture. We use desi seeds. There's seed treatment using biological inoculum, we call it Bijamruta. Then you have other Jivamruta and other botanical formulations for plant growth and also control of pests and diseases, and creepers on the fences. But I just want to mention that these nutrition gardens are financed by the women themselves. There are no subsidies in the project. And at the same time, the seeds are procured locally by them. Again, we don't supply any seed because we believe that the local seed is the best, and it's also scientifically proven. Next. Next one, please. Yeah. This is a case study of one of the members. Previous one, please. Yeah. So this is a case study of a tribal farmer, Mahalakshmi, who has raised a nutrition garden. You can see here she is raising 11 kinds of vegetables, and she talks about her health impact on account of this nutrition garden. They're all very low cost, no cost kind of interventions. Next one. This is another farmer, Venkat Lakshmi from Kurnool district. Again, as Lindsay mentioned, she not only consumes these, but also sells these vegetables within the village. Next one. Yeah. So we just completed a detailed study of what happens in what are the nutrition impacts, what are the impacts in these 50 villages in comparison to other 79 villages which are natural farming villages, but the nutrition counseling, the demand side interventions had not happened there. And we are sharing this research brief for those of you who would like to go into details. Next, please. So this is one question we asked, whether women in the nutrition intensive villages were consuming more natural farming food. And you can see that in terms of grains, pulses, other vegetables, and vitamins, fruits, almost all the food groups, the consumption in nutrition villages, where the additional investment was on demand side, because the supply is same in both the villages. The intervention here was on the demand side. Our nutrition, we call them as natural farming fellows of nutrition, their own team members, worked intensively in visiting village, self-help groups, working on, recipes, promoting nutrition in the self-help group agenda. Next one, please. And this, I think, is the most important outcome. And that's also the reason why I have decided to scale up the nutrition villages intervention also. So we are already expanded from 50 to 129. I think in the coming years, we should go up to 1,000 villages so that they become the role models for the whole state. And the most important impact, something very close to my heart, is that children in Nutri villages have better child development parameters compared to children in the control villages. And we have speculated on the possible mechanisms. One could be the lower pesticide exposure, and because of the proper nutrition, there is less anemia, and overall nutrition status has improved. And natural farming food also provides more trace minerals. We'll be coming out with a report on that shortly, on the importance of trace minerals in promoting this. Next one, please. And this is perhaps another very important outlier. As per the NFHS, there's only 9% diet adequacy in children below 2 years. Overall, India is 11%, but in the nutrition villages, we are able to see that there is 26% diet adequacy. Next one, please. We also saw that there were lower instances in case of underweight and stunting, but we have to look into why wasting is higher. Maybe we have taken more tribal villages, more backward villages in our intervention compared to the universe as a whole. But in any case, this is something that we need to work on looking into why wasting is higher than the NFHS figure. Next one, please. So what we see is, one is on the supply side, natural farming intervention itself. It's giving food grains year round, which are pesticide-free food. And then the Nutri-garden intervention. But to me, the most important is the demand side investment, nutrition counseling for the women, for their families, for the children. And we utilize the self-help group network, their meeting processes. There's also a health subcommittee. And then the institutional linkages with the WCD and the education and tribal welfare departments to where their hostels, the schools, the Anganwadis, we're also promoting this. Next one, please. We also identified a few challenges. We still feel that within the village, there is not enough diversity of the produce, and we also need to work more on the crop planning. And the community cadres who are working on farming and health need to work together. And essentially, more and more investment on the demand side. So I would like to conclude saying that this intervention to me is very, very important, and we hope to make further improvements in this and also figure out how to scale it up. And we're already looking at the next stage of scaling up, moving from 50 to 130 villages, but we'll also be working on scaling it up to at least 10% villages in the state, and which then becomes the norm. Thank you very much. I just want to say that we can't look at a Poshan Vatika in isolation to the overall food insecurity, overall poverty. So our approach is to look at it holistically and thereby have some outlier results in this case. Thank you. Over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vijay Kumar. We really are looking forward to also having more interactions during the panel discussion, because we're already getting some questions and dialogue here. So looking forward to continuing this. So our next presentation is from, we're really lucky to have Ms. Manchi Nimble, who is CEO of the Orissa Livelihood Mission, OLM, which is working for women's empowerment and livelihood promotion across the state. Her contribution to the strengthening of nutrition activities in the state through SHG platforms has been recognized as a progressive mission in the country through its integration of livelihoods and nutrition for millions of rural SHG women. Her leadership has earned the organization many accolades, including recently the recognition from Nuti as a success story on health and nutrition practices. So we're really looking forward to hearing more about the program from Ms. Mansi. So thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity to share our program with all of you. So I would be talking about very similar to the lines of my previous speaker, but we have some extra modules to that which I will discuss. So Mo Kari Bagicha, this is my Nutri-garden in Odia, so which is a state language of Odisha. So next slide. So the overall objective of this Nutri-garden or my backyard Nutri-garden is that promoting diet diversity, building the capacities, and improving the nutrition knowledge. Each three criteria has a very detailed and institutional setup to give information, to develop capacity, to give technical assistance, as well as give them the financial support, which is very important in making the program huge success as well as scalable. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so as I was talking, the three components of this program are agri-nutrition. I will be talking in detail in next slide about them. Then PLA LAN, which is called Community Mobilization and Behavioral Change through Women Self-Help Groups. Women Self-Help Group play the key role in this because most of the household level cooking or domestic level food nutrition is handled by women in rural Odisha in India, and backyard poultry and goat promotion for animal protein. So it is a mixed diet, getting something from the Nutri-garden as well as getting some supplement from the animal protein as well. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the important slide which I will run through you what all we did. So basically, as I said, the difference between, I would say the major difference is that we are implementing Nutri-garden through the institutional setup of Odisha Livelihood Mission, which is part of National Rural Livelihood Mission, in which we have the institutional setup up till the village level, which is called GPLF. So which becomes a localized planning and implementation unit. So at village level, we have this group which ultimately is responsible for planning and implementation of the program. In addition to this, we have developed a lot of books and documents in which they are given knowledge of how they can promote this Nutri-garden through three seasons of India, Kharif, Rabi and Summers, in which what kind of crop would be suitable for which season, as well as additional fruit trees which we have added so that that becomes a sustainable source of livelihood round the year: papaya, drumstick, banana, lemon, which is a tree on the basis of a fruit trees. Then we have ensure that there is each and every household where there is malnourishment or which are nutritionally vulnerable, we have ensured that they must have Nutri-garden. So it is a mandatory for them to have a backyard Nutri-garden. So if wherever there is this data in terms of nutritionally deficit or vulnerable, we have ensured that the families concerned must have the Nutri-garden. So on an average, about 1 to 5 kilos of vegetable were produced every day, are produced in fact, and most of the seeds or the local varieties of the plants are, we encourage them and we give them training to use the indigenous seed and local food varieties and local plants in order to continue that local food habits. And there are different types of prototype of Nutri-garden, which so it is not just based on the land. People who don't have land, they are promoted through gunny bag or in-house kitchen garden as well. So next slide. Yes, so this program has huge convergence with not just the department which is implementing, with women and child department, with health and family department, with agriculture department and with Panchayati Raj department. So all these four departments have a village level office set up in every village of Odisha. So their counterpart, their field functionaries working in health, the field functionaries working in women and child department, as well as working in agriculture, it is worked in partnership with all of these. Then, as I said initially, that localized planning and execution is something which we have given a lot of stress on. We have given this training and assistance to women's self-help group to start their nurseries at the community level, as well as a seed bank are also established at the community level. The one important thing is, as I was saying, because we have an institutional setup to implement this scheme or this program, we also have a dedicated community cadre or community resource. So they are called community resource person for this. There is a manpower called Krishi Mitra, which is basically a person who assists in all farming related technical know-how at the village person, and both on field demonstration and classroom trainings. So these are the ways we had a dedicated and continuous capacity building of this program of all the beneficiaries. And this project was implemented in phases. First, we started in 2018, and then from 2019. In 2021, we expanded this in all the blocks of the state of Odisha. Next slide. Yes, so as you know, it is now being implemented and continue to function in all the blocks of Odisha. So the scale, as we started in the pilot in 18, now the scale is the entire state. So we have everyone in the state. It is in various process now. In many blocks and districts, it has done a saturation mode where everybody have a nutrition garden, or which are going to have this season. So it is in various stages, but the program is being implemented in all the blocks and villages of the state of Odisha. We are also stressing on dedicated budget in this field, where we provide them seed kit or sapling, which is a very nominal amount at the village level, so that women groups don't have to go outside the village to source the input cost or input of plants and saplings. We do it through convergence of another scheme from MGNRGS, which provides daily labor wage cost for making this Nutri-garden. So they not only they have a Nutri-garden in their backyard, but those women or the men who are engaged in developing this Nutri-garden, they are given a daily wage of approved under MGNRGS. Then we have also trained a pool of 300 master trainers across the state of Odisha to give the capacity building training. We have also established seed banks at the village level, which is a source of continuous supply of quality seeds. Then we have also set up community nurseries in order to help different faraway remote households to get those nursery in whenever each season for starting the Nutri-garden. As well as we have trained the 12,000 community cadres, as I said, community resource person in nutrition to provide the technical support for these programs. So this is about this. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So just in continuation of the last slide, we have started the community nursery. We have started, these are some of the pictures which I just said of the seed bank at the cluster level. Having nutrition garden at the institute level in the villages, as well as the tribal residential school, has made it more and more accessible for children under age of 5. And then every year we celebrate nutrition in a very festival mode. So the village women, especially those who have participated in this Nutri-garden around the year, everybody come and celebrate it as a festival of nutrition together on a given date. We have done dietary surveys to assess the improvement, which has shown that the dietary has diversified from one or two vegetables to many vegetables now after introduction of Nutri-gardens. Then compulsory inclusion of household where there is a cases of malnutrition or pregnant women and adolescents, and developing of training module for each community cadres. Next slide. Yeah, so in one of the assessment of this one of our program, we found that there is an increase in taking of fruits from earlier 17% to now 83%, other vegetables from 53 to 57. Then which means that earlier they were taking only four types of vegetable. Now they have added another 47% of vegetable. Vitamin A rich food has been added, as well as green leafy vegetables. So this is the source of the foods consumed in the overall nutrition garden. Actually, I'm not able to see the color combinations, so that's why I missed some part because it is minimized, so I'm not able to see. Basically, I have to move this bar. Yes, these are some of our publication in news press medias. Next. Next. Yes. So thank you. I think I was a little quick, but if there is any questions or anything, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you. And I think we actually, if you'd like, we do have a short video that you shared. Would you like us to play that now?
Yeah, definitely. If someone can play that.
Hopefully the audio
Apurva?
will come through Apurva. Or would you like me to play it, Apurva? Oh, she's got it. Great. I always just worry if the audio actually comes through. Maybe Apurva, actually, if you rewind and unmute yourself, maybe that will come through. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't hear the audio. I'm not sure if others can hear it, or maybe it's
Yeah, the audio is not there, but that's all right. It's a very short video.
yeah.
Just to, you know, this was done at the last year Nutri Festival. So if you see these, it is actually a festival. Like there were colors, there were women bringing different foods from their Nutri-garden, celebrating with food, like cooking on the day of the festival. So it was actually celebrated. Like these are all food item which they grow, which they have grown in the kitchen garden. So these all pictures are grown in their kitchen garden. So these are all basically in a nutshell. If you see, it was a kind of a more, very happy occasion. See the women who are sitting in this tribal area, they're bringing the vegetables from their home, and with music, as you see, I'm just giving a voice note. So now it was actually like a proper festival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
So nowhere you would see that women, I mean, I personally felt that nowhere people would come together to celebrate the vegetable grown in their backyard. You see? So, and not just vegetables, but nutritious, rich vegetables. Yeah. So this is in a nutshell. Yeah.
It's great. I think really great to see this. And thank you for so much for sharing your experiences. We've got quite a few questions coming through, but and so we'll launch our panel briefly. But I first want to hear from our two new panelists, if that's all right, and then we'll jump into our panel discussion. So first, I will introduce. We have two panelists joining us. The first is Mr. Jha, who's the managing director, the Institute of Environment and Eco Development in Patna, Bihar. I'll try to speak up. Apologies. I just getting back from being a bit sick. Mr. Jha is also the ex-state consultant for UNICEF in Chhattisgarh, and he is working in the social sector primarily for women, adolescent, and children health in rural and tribal areas. Excuse me. And his experience spans over 2 decades, focusing on nutrition and the environment. And today he's going to talk about a particular program in Chhattisgarh that he supported WCD for rolling out an initiative with a special focus on aspirational districts. So thank you so much, Mr. Jha, for joining us today. And we'll get your slides up here. Apurva, perhaps we could share them on our side if that's all right. Terrific. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Jha.
Yeah, thank you so much for the giving the opportunity for this sharing the idea and experience on these platforms. The government of India, Ministry of Women and Child Development has initiated the Poshan Batika in the Poshan Abhiyan, which can meet the important dietary diversity gap by providing the fruits and the vegetables, nuts, roots, and around the ears. So it creates a unique opportunity to highlight the vital role of the fruits and the vegetables in the human nutrition and food security as well as the food safety. So we are the major concept of the national nutrition missions of the Poshan Abhiyans with a big slogan that is the Sahi Poshan Desh Roshan. That was the big slogans in a convergence with the aligned department agriculture, WCD, health, PhD, rural department, Panchayati Raj, etc. So we are trying to share the rolling out model with the Nutri-gardens in Anganwadi centers, in particular in Jharkhand. So it is an initiative that has been effective state toward the addressing the malnutrition. The concept of the Nutri-garden somewhat similar to the home garden, community gardens, and sapling plant in the a small space, backyard, the home or Anganwadi centers. So this help in the utilization of the empty space for the cultivation of the chemical-free nutrients rich vegetables that help in the physical and the mental development of the children. The Nutri-gardens is a very key open that can be developed and minimize the malnutrition and anemia from the balanced diet with vegetables and the fruits. So, next slide. So we are going to comparisons with the situations of the Chhattisgarh is very alarming and with NFS 4 and 5. There are two types of burden in the Chhattisgarh. One is the malnutrition, another is the anemia. Approximately 60% women are suffering from the anemia. Next slide. This is demographic and structural benefits of the structural and with the beneficiary of the Chhattisgarh. Approximately, we are targeting the children 6 months to 59 months, approximately 28.33 lakhs children in these groups. Pregnant women are the 7.6 lakhs, lactating women 6.8 lakhs, adolescent girls from the age groups 11 year to 14 years, 10 to 13 lakhs. Among these populations, only 33% the tribal populations. Next slide. The Nutri-garden is a very important interventions among the Poshan Abhiyans, by which the Anganwadi generally purchase and transport the vegetable from the local markets to prepare the hot cooked meals, and which some later fed to the children, pregnant and lactating mothers. The Nutri-garden are the micro solutions and affordable way in the ensuring health foods and the balanced diet in the small space of the land. So cultivation of the fruits and the gardening in the systematic manners, a small space of land, affordable households. So today, children are fed fresh, healthy, and the nutritious vegetables in their plate directly to the Nutri-gardens. Next, next please. So we are discussing about the innovations, methodology, strategy, scale-ups, and the best practices from the Nutri-garden in the Chhattisgarh. We are discussing about the exclusive only the Anganwadi institutional Nutri-gardens, particularly in Anganwadi center in Chhattisgarh. Next slide. The description of the preparing of the bed before the times. And second is the dumping of the additional soil if needed quantity was inadequate. Mixing of the vermicomposting without any chemicals with the soils, and the seedlings of the seeds were given in the twice in a year, July to August and November to December. Mixing crops for the around the year for the produces fruits and vegetables to the Anganwadi cane. The plants are arranged shorter towards the eastern region and taller toward the western region for optimum utilization of the sunlight. Crops of the different families are the grown together and intercroppings, relaxed croppings, mixed cropping for the optimum utilization of the lands. Living fence, often tree and the creepers are the introduced in the fence to the more output and protections. Nitrogen fixings, tree and the use for the green and the manuring leaves. Integrating with the tree, tree fruits can be integrated with papaya, drumstick, banana, or etc. incorporated, integrated with the Nutri-gardens. Next slide. The current development in the Nutri-garden is the Anganwadi is totally 51,584. That is the functional Anganwadi. Total number of the Poshan Batika is implemented 23,284. The number of medicinal plant in the Poshan Batika 19,807 are identified, and the number of the fruit trees in the Poshan Vatika 57,207 varieties, and the number of the vegetable in the Poshan Vatika in the 1,14,067. So these are the diversified varieties for the nutrient varieties among the fruits and the vegetables, including medicinal plants. Next slide. The status of the Nutri-gardens as covered in the Chhattisgarh, the 2019-20, 11% Anganwadi was covered. In the 20 and 21, 30% Anganwadi covered with the Nutri-gardens, and 20 and 21 in the 54% Anganwadi center were covered with the Nutri-garden. Next slide, please. Sorry. Next slide. We have assessed with the KBK and Agriculture University with the in the Rajnandgaon in the 2021 nutritional status before and after the intervention of the Nutri-gardens. We have identified the malnourished children 377 before the implementation of the Nutri-garden in Anganwadi Center. 142 identified stunted after the Nutri-garden 76. Wasted before the Nutri-gardens 41, and after the Nutri-gardens 20 identified 27. Under the wet 194 before the Nutri-garden, after the Nutri-gardens implementation 82. This is the and approximately 80% same and male children move out from the same category. Next slide, please. So outcome and impact of the interventions and the key findings and the learnings. Nutri-gardens developed at the Anganwadi are the more effective compared to the communities. Nutritional foods in the daily intakes already increased. In the hot cook meals, Anganwadi has used vegetable in the hot cooks meals at the Anganwadi centers. Nutri-garden ensured availability of the nutritional throughout the years. The reduce says the expenditure on the household expenses, use of the wastewaters available around the households. The use of the wastewaters ensure the variety of the vegetables available at one times. This is the good for the learnings and essential for the childhoods, improve the environment and improve the earth and the climate change. This is the big factors for the increasing and implementation of the Nutri-gardens. The key challenges: land availability near the home, that is the very critical. Threatened of the open animals like cow, buffalo, and goats are damaging the Nutri-gardens. Lack of the feasible species and the waters. Uncertainty of the survival of the fruit bearing is also is a critical lack of awareness among the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are not aware up to levels, and the regular capacity building should be increases among the stakeholders, and biodiversity losses due to not listing the biodiversity variety. So local varieties should be conserved, protect by the develop of the PVR. One program is implementing right now. There are the lots of biodiversity varieties in the Chhattisgarh, and Chhattisgarh is the forest fringe area. So there is a need to conserve the biodiversity variety at the local level for the protection from the eroded. Next slide. So improve the complementary feeding within the 2 years first, and the second regular monitoring the THR and the SNP, and the continuity regular program is the community development programs based on the villages, BHND, and etc. complementary feeding, and focus on the SBCC strategy planning in the Ocean Beyond Divas, mapping with the local foods and the feeding practices, that is the more importance, and the ECD responsive feeding only early stimulation is the most important. So, and the create the partnerships among the alliance for the complementary feedings, and Nutri-garden should be universalized at the grassroots levels, in the forest fringe at the household levels. So our recommendation is this: the more and more effective way identify the due list of the village by the priority basis. Next slide. Thank you. If any question?
Lindsay, you're on mute.
So sorry. Thank you so much, Mr. Jha. And because we're running a little bit short on time, without further ado, I'll pass it over to Dr. Kalpana, who's Assistant Director of Research and Administration at the Foundation for Medical Research. Interestingly, I was interested to learn that she's a molecular biologist by training, and currently working quite a bit in TB and COVID-19, but has really fully recognized the need for a holistic approach in the role of nutrition and Nutri-gardens as well for immune function. And so we're really delighted to have her here for really quite interdisciplinary webinar, and to share some experiences for FMR's Nutri-garden program. So thanks so much, Dr. Kalpana, for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. That really sums up what I'm doing, and I hope I will be able to do justice to what we've learned as an organization in this project. Can you all see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I think it's not a presentation, but yes. This project, it was a short project which was undertaken by Foundation for Medical Research around 2011-2013 in Melghat area in Maharashtra. The project was headed by Dr. Tanas Badi. Unfortunately, she passed away earlier this year, and so that's why I'm presenting this from what we learned in that project. So this kitchen garden model was tried in Melghat, a tribal district in northern Maharashtra, largely a small farmer communities known for its high malnutrition-related deaths for a long time. Our foundation initiated a 2-year project with Jamshedji Tata Trust on the establishment of perennial kitchen gardens and nutrition education in this district. The project initially covered 396 households and in 10 villages. However, because there was a huge interest in the project grew to cover 1,580 households in 15 villages. The project supported the development of skills, knowledge, and basic startup tools for setting up a perennial kitchen garden. So So we conducted a baseline study that covered about 396 households in 10 villages. And this was conducted to initially understand the level of malnutrition, knowledge of nutrition, their existing dietary habits, and kitchen garden practices. Malnutrition was found to be highly prevalent amongst all age groups, more so in the youngest of 1 to 5 years. Kitchen gardens, though traditionally prevalent, were cultivated mostly during monsoons in this region, which otherwise faces acute water scarcity. We noticed that there was a widespread lack of knowledge on nutrition and hygiene. A high degree of improper weaning practices for infants was observed, like delayed weaning. Complementary food that was given were not having micronutrients like rice, dal, thick roti, and packaged foods like biscuits and chips. In general, they believed that the food has to be eaten only to alleviate hunger and had no understanding of micronutrient deficiency or its link to health and disease. A key insight from the baseline study was that economic considerations outweighed nutritional wisdom. The income which was generated was usually spent on material things like cosmetics and cell phone instead of food. But backed with this knowledge, the project set up a kitchen garden model that combined education and sustainability as the core principles. For education, the model ensured health and nutrition-based skills and knowledge building of the community through community meetings, pictorial IEC materials, recipe demonstrations, and interactive activities for women and school children. Careful choices were made for sustainability of the kitchen garden. The plants selected were micronutrient dense and perennial so that it can provide produce throughout the year and continue to provide even after the intervention period. We selected a combination of trees, shrubs, and creeper plants, which requires no motivation once the plants are mature and continuously provide seeds for further propagation. In the initial 2 to 3 years, when the trees were reaching maturity, we supplied seeds of green leafy vegetables, which was done to sustain the motivation in the in-between period. Trees have a threefold advantage. They withstand adverse climatic conditions, require minimum labor, and have a higher yield for the area occupied, making them suitable for households with small plots to grow them. In order to further ensure sustainability, our project focused on restricting the plants to limited varieties so that it's not overwhelming for the people. The scarcity of water was to some extent overcome by use of household wastewater from hand and utensil wash. We popularized the use of drip system for green leafy vegetables during winter and drying of excess produce for storage and use during summer and early monsoons. More importantly, we avoided hybrid seeds to ensure self-sufficiency. Households were encouraged to harvest and distribute excess seeds to relatives and neighbors. The model generated demand and so that more villages and households were taken into the project. Similar demand was also seen from Anganwadi schools to set up kitchen garden in the school. Our foundation conducted follow-up surveys in the subsequent summers and winters for 2 years to understand the impact. One of the major impacts was seen in the diet diversification. Participants started consuming more of green leafy vegetables and other vegetables compared to what they were having before with time, and we're happy to incorporate even newer parts of the plants which were not usually used by them. The most striking impact was in the percentage of households that maintain kitchen garden in the different seasons. So as compared to baseline, which the most effect was seen in summer and the next in winter, summer had 4% household having kitchen garden in the at the baseline, increased to 86% after the intervention. As promoted, improved saving practices like drying of green leafy vegetables, seed harvest for further propagation, increase in wastewater for the kitchen garden was seen. The wastewater use increased from 19% at the baseline to 63% after the intervention. Lastly, nutrition and hygiene education resulted in improved weaning practices for infants, increased hand washing practices, and safer drinking water practices, and more. The project did have challenges. It was difficult to convince the use of backyard for kitchen garden as the fields had easy access to water. Scarcity of water in summer and migration of work affected the survival of the plants and regular maintenance of the kitchen garden. We found that the knowledge and experience on how to grow the plants were also lacking because these were predominantly tribal area and they were not agricultural by nature. So this affected the lower survival, the plants than we expected. But however, the project taught us for a successful kitchen garden model, we need to ensure sustainability through use of perennial plants and trees that are adapted to mainly local conditions. Education is very critical, and we need to promote sustainability practices like wastewater use, rainwater harvesting, and even develop healthy alternatives to junk food to ensure health of the children. Perhaps community gardening sharing practices may also be adopted that can ensure resource sharing and a long-term impact. So we have a policy brief and a video on this. I will be sharing the links and the policy brief in the chat for those of you interested. You can also write to us at fmr@fmrindia.org if you would like to know more about the project. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Kalpana. We really appreciate your presentation. So we are running a little bit over, but I do want to give the opportunity to have our panelists come in and just have any questions. We luckily have been getting some questions in the chat and they've been answered directly. But maybe I'll just pose one question, unless there are any remarks that our esteemed panel would like to share before before we get started. Any follow-on remarks? If not, then I might pose one question, which I think actually relates to one of the questions in the chat, as well as one of the remarks that Mr. Vijay Kumar made about not viewing these programs in isolation of the food insecurity and poverty experienced by households. I think one of the questions that people are often interested in is, what is the pathway? Someone asked, how are Nutri-gardens having an impact on SAM and kids? And I wonder if our panelists could speak from their experience about whether or not this was, they think that it's, this consumption pathway, of course, but any other pathways that you think these Nutri-gardens may be having an impact through that should be kind of highlighted and perhaps strengthened looking ahead to the future to really maximize impacts on nutritional outcomes in kids?
I have an observation here. The Nutri-gardens need to be supplemented with livestock and fish, as Odisha is doing and as we are doing, and so that is one I see in the planning part itself. But the Nutri-gardens also encourage children to understand more about the plants, the diversity, so it's also, I see this as a way of educating children and make this as a lifelong habit. It's not just consumption, but also part of their education, so that if the same intervention is happening in the Anganwadi center, the school, then I think we're also developing better citizens.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you. Any other comments on social pathways? We've actually got an interest. Oh, please go ahead, Mr. Jha. Yes.
Yeah. So more just Poshan Abhiyan as the nodal department of the W. Just like horticulture department should be nodal department and explore the activities at the grassroots level, which cover the wide range of the crops such as fruits, vegetables, roots, and tuber, and aromatic and medicinal plant under the horticulture department. So that should be explored, and that should be aware among the peoples at the school, Anganwadi Kendra, and the self-help groups. So horticulture department should be lead in these activities.
I might go to one of the questions in the chat because I think it's a really interesting one about whether or not there are any initiatives in urban areas. Of course, all of the programs discussed today were focusing on rural households, but as India becomes more urbanized, any initiatives that you're aware of for Nutri-gardens in urban settings?
Yeah, we have a very growing and a vibrant, terrace garden kind of initiative in the urban areas. There's a lot of interest in this. I think it's very, very important as we as society move into almost 50% urban, 50% rural, and over a period of time, maybe after 30, 40 years, it could be majority in the urban areas. I think it's a very important question. It has not really been addressed properly, but I think it needs to be done. And I think the WCD department also needs to look at this, but it's a very important question. There are initiatives. I know Bangalore does a great job. Hyderabad, there's a growing initiative in Vijayawada. I'm aware of the work in the southern states, but I think it's a very important question. And household waste and water can be used to grow healthy and nutritious vegetables. There's a concept of wicking bags. Wick. So but it's a good one. A lot of work needs to be done on that.
Yes. Great. I feel like we've learned a lot today, and I just want to be conscious that where you are, it's getting quite late in the evening, so I don't want to keep everyone too late. I'm sure seeing all these beautiful pictures of vegetables is making everyone a bit hungry. And so, but I just want to say that thank you so much to all of our panelists. We have learned a lot, and we will work on putting together a brief about this webinar that will be circulated to everyone. And we've had a lot of requests in the chat for presentations to be shared if possible as well as a lot of people in the chat who are planning to are working on their own Nutri-garden programs in different parts of India. So I'm sure there's a lot of appreciation for learning from these lessons today. Ananya, I'm not sure if you wanted to share anything further before we wrap things up.
Just a big thanks to all the panelists for sharing very applied lessons in terms of how Nutri Gardens can be scaled up. So we do invite the audience to join Anuvad in our learning network. I've shared the link in the chat box because as you sign up for the learning network, and of course you've signed up for the webinar, we'll be in touch with you with the recording of the webinar, also link to the presentations, to all the work that's been presented so far. And hopefully, we will also, building on from this conversation, also look at how we can initiate a direct policy dialogue around using and utilizing these lessons, especially in the larger context of the Poshan Vatika program, and see what different development partners can do to bring together. This is very very multi-sectoral, so to really explore how convergence can be advocated and promoted in this regard between Ministry of Women and Child Development, Agriculture, Health, Rural Development. We've seen different elements of those coming out here. So watch out for our next phase of work in the larger scheme of things. And thanks again for joining us, and we'll be in touch with you with the recording of the webinar and also a policy brief summarizing the key takeaways from the learnings that all the panelists generously shared with us. Thank you so much, and have a good night and a good day ahead. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Everyone.